Live. I am Jessica Folsom.
I'm Gina Bruno.
And we are your English ESO community managers.
And we're live.
We have a great show lined up for you today, so thank you so much for joining us. And as a reminder, if you would like to know when we go live, follow us on Twitch. So let's take a look at what is up for today's show.
So up first, we're going to go through some official ESO news very quickly because we know everyone wants to hear the next thing.
Then we will talk to lead combat designer Eric Wrobel about Thieves Guild gameplay updates.
After that, we're going to wrap up the show with some new music from Thieves Guild with our audio lead, Brad Derrick.
And as always, we do have one giveaway at some time during the show. And it's a good one this time.
You're just going to have to wait and see when it is. It's a surprise. So let's dive right into official news. Or we're not going to. We're just going to kind of do it right here on the fly.
So our official news is going to be really quick. We know you guys all want to talk to Eric Wrobel, so we will be taking some questions during his segment. Go ahead and think of your questions, and we will grab as many as we can during the show, as long as we haven't covered them already. So for official news, the patch 2.2.11, that's a PC patch on live, did go up. And it included a full fix for Camel Hunter and some performance improvements for Cyrodiil.
It was a little patch.
Yep, it was a small patch.
But it was still a patch.
And we have another one coming.
We do have another one coming on PTS, tentatively scheduled for Monday. We have patch 2.3.2 going up. That's going to be our second incremental patch on PTS. We have a whole bunch of things going in there. We wanted to note a couple things for you. Mike Finnegan, who's our dungeon lead, he recently put up a post on the forums over in the PTS section talking about some of the changes he's making to Mauve Lorcage, the new trial in Thieves Guild. We are purposely making some of the bosses a little bit easier. That way everybody can, well, not everybody, I guess, but more people can go through to the last boss and provide feedback and any bug reports there, kind of let us know how your experience is going through there. So you'll see some changes to difficulty, totally on purpose, totally for testing. Mm-hmm. In addition, the main story quest for Thieves Guild is also going to be awarding a little more reputation than you've seen last time. Again, on purpose, it's just for testing. That way everybody can kind of get through more of the content and give us some more feedback.
Yep.
And in addition, that patch is going to have the European character copy.
And this weekend, we're actually going to be hosting the very first of two Mauve Lorcage official testing weekends. What that means is starting today through Sunday, the Dungeons team will be looking for live streams of Mauve Lorcage, and they'll be hopping in. They've already kind of been doing this, but we're making this an official, like they're actually really going to be doing it this weekend. So if you are going to be streaming Mauve Lorcage, either normal or veteran, send us a tweet at Tess Online or post on the forums, and we'll make sure that they know about it.
Just to be clear real quick, EU character copies is happening with the patch Monday. The stamp is being taken, gosh, I don't remember. We'll find out, and we'll post on the forums for you. Apologize. And the nerfs that we were just talking about to the difficulty, it's just for testing.
Yes.
This is not something that's going live.
Because we want to get as much feedback as possible on the content.
Right.
So we also have some Hearts Day events going on. So currently we have
What is Hearts Day, Jess?
Hearts Day is an official Tamrielic holiday. It's celebrating basically love across Tamriel. You can look it up. It's actually a real thing. We didn't make it up. And it's on February 16th, so 2 days after Valentine's Day. So it's on Tuesday. We currently have a Hearts Day Crown Star sale going on where you can get 50% off the Pledge of Mara, the wedding gown, and the wedding suit. So for all of your wedding needs, we know weddings are expensive. And we also will have a PTS event. It's a small event on 2/16 at 2 p.m. We're going to be having a mass wedding ceremony. So that'll be in Volkelgard. We'll put up a post about it on the official forums after ESO Live today, and we hope you'll join us.
Lastly, we've seen a lot of people asking about our $1 million contest that we had recently. Excuse me. Just kind of wondering, like, what happened with that? Did anybody win? Was it a scam? Wasn't a scam. It was a real thing.
There were legal rules and everything.
Yep. We do have a grand prize winner. He has been contacted, and we will be announcing the winner at some point in the near future. And at that point, once we make our public announcement, we'll also be reaching out to all the second prize winners who won crowns as well. So that way you'll know if you've won. It's coming up. It is a real contest.
And as Gina said, the winner has been contacted, and he has replied back. If you see any, there have been a few scams for the $1 million giveaway. So if you see something that looks a little fishy, it's awful. Yeah. So just be careful. Since we have already contacted the winner and they have already replied, if you get contacted by someone saying it's us about the grand prize, it's not, unfortunately. So we also have a new ESO soundtrack that's going to be arriving on iTunes any day now, so keep an eye out there. We will actually be talking to Brad about it a little bit later in the show, along with how he creates new music for DLCs. And last but not least, we have a really cool feature created by a fan called the Rogues Folio. We posted it on...
This thing is awesome.
Yeah, we posted it on social media. So here's a picture of just one of the pages.
And this was all created by this player using some of our art and some art that they created. It's really kick-ass.
Looks like his name was Anemonian, and he's from Tumblr. Or she. I actually don't know. But we encourage you to check it out. It's a really cool fan project.
It is.
So that wraps up our news. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No.
Okay.
It's fine. I'm just kind of, we did it.
So next up, we are going to be diving into Thieves Guild combat skill line, champion point changes, and beyond with lead combat designer Eric Wrobel. All right, we are back
with Eric Wrobel.
Hey.
He is our lead combat designer. And just to kind of start off, do you want to let everybody know sort of what that means or what you do?
Because it's so much more than combat.
It is.
Yeah, there's definitely combat, right? So we have our core mechanics, you know, that we work on iterating with, like blocking, roll dodging, stealthing, things like that. We have, you know, the global balance, and you know the modifiers on like monsters. We do itemization as well, and then there's all the players' abilities and skills. And
the champion system.
Yep, champion system.
And attributes.
Yep.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So we keep real busy, and we really made updates to like almost all that stuff with this update, right? Like we made a huge number of champion updates. We added a whole bunch of new item sets in here, and then we have tons and tons of tweaks and changes for all the abilities.
And it's just part of a larger plan that's expanding beyond Thieves Guild, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And also, me personally, before I was doing this, I actually was the ability designer. So pretty much all the abilities in the game I worked on, and I did, you know, a bunch of design work, bunch of implementation work. Like I worked, you know, with the artists and the programmers to get them all working. So these abilities are all kind of like my children a little bit. Like I just, you know, like I spent a lot of hard work.
A lot of children.
You put a lot of heart into it.
I have, well, I like, you want to get my, you know, seed all over the place.
Oh gosh.
A little too far maybe. So.
Nothing
Moving
to say
on.
To that. Moving on.
Yeah. So, but I love, you know, I like all the classes equally. You know, like people be like, oh, Zoss likes this class more, but like everyone on the combat team plays all the classes, and we're all really invested. And like, you know, we've all, you know, spent nights where we're here till like midnight just trying to get stuff in for the next build. Come on, Gina.
It just said chat, and everybody's like, what? Anyway.
Okay.
Please keep, I'm sorry.
So yeah, we really like abilities in summation of that.
Okay.
So I guess sort of elephant in the room, we should start things off with AoE caps, because we know everybody really wants to hear about it.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's dive right in. Not waste any time.
Let's do it.
Yeah, there are a ton of changes, so we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Yeah, so let's start with the big one, right? Let's not waste any time.
May as well.
In general, yeah, like we put up the forum posts, and we got a lot of feedback and stuff, so it was really good.
And that was from I think a few weeks ago. It wasn't the forum post we just posted a couple days ago or whatever it was. This came from
it was a while
little bit
ago. But we got a lot of perspectives and a lot of different people, who had different opinions on both sides. So that part of it was really useful for us to, just sort of add into our discussions.
Yeah, because it encompasses PvP, PvE,
Yep,
large
absolutely.
group content, solo content.
Yeah, part of that is why this is a very delicate thing, and why we want to be very careful and very, very methodical with the changes that we're making. So, and a lot of people were like, yeah, just change the the values on the AOE caps, right, and that'll fix a lot of problems. But yeah, we definitely have to think about how this will affect PvE combat, and when you're fighting in trials, and when you're fighting in dungeons, and when you're fighting in the overworld. And we have performance concerns, to think about if this ability can now hit an unlimited number of targets, and then also those targets can then proc secondary effects like meteors, and then those can proc other explosions. So it's definitely something we have to keep in mind when we're doing these changes. And then another piece of it is we're not 100% sure that would fix sort of the core problem that we're looking to solve, which is we don't want a group of people all stacking on top of one really small area. Like people say stack on the crown, right? Where they're all just follow the leader and get
Stack
as tightly as they can, and then just like run through all the AoEs, right? And yeah, certainly AoEs would stop that, right? But potentially, then it's just two groups who are both stacking on the crown without caps, and then they're just killing each other even faster, right? So that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So
there's some time to kill stuff to consider too.
Yeah. And so what we're looking to do is create more strategic gameplay, where people are thinking about their positioning, they're thinking about where they are on the battlefield, both relative to the enemy players, but also relative to their allies. And
this comes into play for trials, for instance, too.
Yeah, it comes in. Yeah, it happens in trials. It happens in PvP. Yeah, it's definitely a big part of the game. And so with healing abilities, we want those to always hit 6 targets and not any more. So there's some that you want to be in groups, but not like super large groups, right? Like groups of 6, it's definitely like, okay, this AoE heal will be as effective as it possibly can be. Whereas with the damage ability, it can hit up to 60 targets. So the more people who are stacked, the more damage you're doing with that cast of the ability.
Right.
And it outpaces healing by quite a bit the more people are standing there together. And when we were approaching a solution from the ability side, the first thing we did was look at all of the healing-based abilities that people had. So Barrier was a big one, because this is an ultimate ability that would affect 20 people. So we pushed that one down to 6, so that it sort of worked within the confines of that. And then with Purge, that was another one where it would remove debuffs from a whole bunch of your allies, and it would also heal them. So that's another one where we reduced the number of targets down from that one. So we didn't have these abilities that sort of went around that sort of design goal or rule of only 6 targets per heal.
And some of the changes in Cyrodiil with AP gain for Thieves Guild kind of reflect that goal of smaller groups too.
Yeah, now you're a little bit more effective if you're just going off by yourself, or if you're in sort of a smaller group.
Right.
But we didn't want to nerf the larger groups either. So the way Wheeler worked those numbers, those guys should be getting about the same amount of AP they were before.
So that was a very fancy way of saying we don't have plans to remove them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I got a few more points though. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm like, I'm a little, I'm long-winded, but like people have had, a lot of passionate things to say, so I want to make sure I'm sort of addressing all the points.
Explaining it all.
Please do.
Yeah. So yeah, another change that Brian Wheeler and I worked on was with the siege stuff, right? So now all the siege weapons do around like 30% more damage than they used to, so they're a lot more impactful. And the reason we had to do that was that we bumped up Battle Spirit in one of the updates. So instead of giving a 20% reduction to all damage, it went to 50. But we didn't increase any of the siege stuff. So proportionally, the siege stuff got a lot less powerful when we added that. So we wanted to put some of the power back into siege And then we also adjusted some of the siege weapons so that you would be able to hit moving targets more effectively to help deal with, these ball groups that were running in, and, and they'd have rapid maneuvers too, so they'd be coming in really quickly. So now the siege weapons, they'll turn a little bit faster so that you're able to actually get the guys who are moving around.
Fast-moving groups.
Yeah, and also there was sort of like a scatter area on the ballista, so you would like shoot it, but then it would kind of travel around. So now it's a lot more precise too, so it'll go more where you're trying to shoot it, so you'll be able to hit those groups of players with them.
Okay.
And then we have on sort of the offensive side, in addition to the defensive and the healing side, we've made some changes. So Magicka Detonation is an ability that we added to the AVA skill lines to be really effective at trying to deal with huge groups of players. And this ability ended up being kind of more useful almost just for single players because of the way the damage scaled. So we adjusted the scaling so it's less useful when you hit a single guy. It doesn't do as much damage, but hitting additional targets, it now scales up faster and faster when you're hitting more guys, and it's got a higher maximum cap. Okay. So now you can end up increasing the damage by 100% instead of 25% if you hit the maximum number of targets with it. And then we also looked at the class abilities and gave more damage to some of the class abilities. So like the sorcerers, like Crystal Blast, it now has a lot more AoE damage, so you can throw that into a group of enemies who are charging at you and not have to get hit by all their PB AoEs that they're spamming, that are just sort of like impulsing or doing Steel Tornado and stuff like that. So, and like Dragon Knight, we gave them another option for dealing damage from range. So we wanted to create more of a battlefield situation instead of like two groups just charging, that you can actually do some damage and mow them down before they get there. So that's sort of, in general, the direction we wanted to go with that. We also, with Steel Tornado, we reduced the radius from 12.5 to 9 meters. We didn't want to overdo the nerf with that. Like, we still want it to be a useful ability, but we didn't want it to be like, the radius on this is just so much better than anything else. Like, this is just by far the optimal playstyle. So we realized it's still a really good ability, and we want it to be a good ability, but we didn't want to like overdo the nerf. We try to be as gentle as possible, when we're doing nerfs like that. So, in general, with the AoE caps, since we've made quite a few changes to all the abilities, we want to see how those play out, and we are committed to solving this problem of people just balling up and like running through. So we're not saying that we would never ever modify the AoE caps in any way, but we want to investigate more of these ability-based solutions to create more tactical play, instead of just doing like a blanket sort of like easy fix of like, we'll just put everything at limited targets.
Yeah. So this isn't the end all be all, like we're done.
Right.
This will be a continuous effort.
Yep. And for the upcoming updates, like we have blocks of times we have set out to be like, all right, let's just look at this problem, and like watch streams and get feedback and just play ourselves on the live servers and see how it's changed now from when it was before and see how much better it is.
In addition to playing yourself, watching streams, we also look at logs, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of data that gets pulled.
Kind of back end. What abilities are people using? How much damage are they doing compared to others?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there we have access to.
Alrighty.
So
good
we got the elephant. Push that guy out. All right. And if anyone still is unclear, or they have other sort of pieces that like we may be able to get some questions at the end. Next thing I want to talk about is the classes in general, and how they relate to each other, and how that relationship has sort of changed over time. Initially, when we were designing the classes and creating all the abilities, our goal was to just make cool stuff. Like just make a bunch of abilities, have some cool effects on them, like make it so it's a good time casting the abilities, and call it a day, pretty much, right? And I think we succeeded in doing that. Like the classes are a lot of fun. They can do a lot of really cool things. But over time, we've been moving towards making it so that every class can fulfill every role. And the reason we're doing that is it sort of supports more of an Elder Scrolls style game of go anywhere and do anything. So we don't want you to be locked into, oh, I picked this class, so that means I can only tank. Or I picked this class, I have to be a
Right.
healer, right? Like we want you to just pick a class because that's fun, right? Like I want to breathe fire, right? Or I want to call a bunch of storms, right? And that's why you pick your class, and not for a specific thing that you're going to be doing in the game, because you don't really know what thing you're going to like in our
Right.
game, right? Because tanking in our game is different than other games. Healing in our game is different than in other games.
Or you may want to switch it up at some point.
Yep, absolutely. So the changes with this update and updates in the future as well, we want to make it so that every class is able to fulfill every role. So that's like, for example, we gave Dragon Knights some more things to make them better at fulfilling the healing role.
And you'd still have to specialize into certain champion points and class abilities and passives if you wanted to specialize in a certain role, but you'd have the ability to respec if you wanted to.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So one of the recent changes that was put on the PTS build for Thieves Guild was Breath of Life. And
Yes,
we know that has been
we
a
updated
very hot topic. So did you want to kind of address that a little bit further from what we put on the forums?
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Nah. Next topic. I'm good.
Next.
Yeah. Breath of Life is an extremely powerful ability, and it's a very sort of one of these class-defining abilities that, like, oh yeah, it's really cool to play Templar because I can cast this heal, and it's a super strong, like, huge heal value, right? You can cast it while you're moving, you can cast it instantly, but then also with Breath of Life, it was healing 3 targets. So not only was it doing all these things, but it was a huge single target heal and a huge AoE heal. So you didn't need to combine it with any other ability, really. Like, you just need that, and you're good to go. Don't worry about anything
Kind
else.
of the single go-to.
Yeah. It was like your one-stop shop for healing needs. So what we did with this update is we wanted you to have a little bit more breadth of ability usage if you wanted to really be dedicated to the healing role. So we started with making it so that their 30% healing bonus from their passives now gives them the major healing buff. So this means that now all the restoration staff abilities are also really good for a Templar because they all get that buff applied to them. And that 30 or that 25% healing bonus, it applies now to you specifically instead of applying to your allies. So that means you have to just be standing in your area of protection. Your allies do not have to anymore. So they can be running and going,
So
their
if you
hair's
have
on
DPS
fire.
running all over the place.
Yeah, you just need to make sure you're somewhere in that circle, and you'll get that healing bonus applied.
Okay.
So you'll end up be getting more heals out of your Breath of Lives, against these sort of smaller number of targets. So it makes it a little bit actually better as a single target nuke. Which is sort of the role we wanted to give for that. And then we have the healing ritual ability for the Templar, which we improved as a really good AoE heal. And the cast time is now reduced, so it's easier to use that. Because in general, the burst damage happens really quickly. Like, you die really fast, right? So we wanted you to have time to hit the ability and actually heal someone, instead of like I hit the ability and I'm like waiting and then they die before it goes off, right? And in general, like, we'll definitely be evaluating this ability to see if it's sort of effective enough. It's definitely a really big heal, and it heals a lot of people, so it is much better for healing a group than Rush Ceremony, but we want to make sure that it's also still useful in a lot of situations. So we may end up in the future tweaking the radius so it's a little bit easier to hit allies if they're kind of running all over the place. And then we are also, because of the restoration staff is now usable as a Templar, you could use Grand Healing as your AoE if you wanted to fulfill that role either. So we kind of just wanted to give them more choices instead of being like, you're a Templar, you have to use only Templar abilities.
More tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like the change to Breath of Life was also the goal was to add more diversity to different types of gameplay, different healing situations,
Yeah.
fights that were maybe longer but sustained versus things that required burst heals. Is that kind of what you were going for?
Yeah, and also keep in mind, we made all these changes before we started doing the balance testing for this update. So, like, we tested trials and we tested dungeons and we tested PvP with these values in mind, right? So it's not like, oh, we're just gonna like slip this in because this ability is kind of too good, right? Like the whole update, we were planning on making this change, and we are really happy with it. That now this feels a little bit more like a single target heal, and you want to use it in those burst situations.
Okay.
Right on. The next thing that we've kind of seen a lot of people asking about on the forums was some stamina ability changes, like for stamina sorks or
yeah, they're like
Stamplars or
they're like reading all these notes and like, well, these other classes got like a bunch of really cool changes, but like,
What about the stamina builds?
Yeah, like where's my candy? Where are my toys? Right? That's totally legitimate. We basically really wanted to focus on updating the classes and making these abilities better and more useful in a bunch of situations. And I mean, we're coming out with updates like every 3 months, and we only have so many hands, right? We can't do everything. So we definitely we knew about this going in, that we weren't going to be able to do anything, and it's definitely on the roadmap for update 10.
Dark Brotherhood.
Yeah, Dark Brotherhood. We're going to be looking at stamina a whole bunch and making sure, we're going to go through every single ability and every single morph and make sure, oh yeah, these are compelling morph choices, and that this is definitely an ability that I want to cast, and that I have an interesting set of abilities to use instead of like, oh, something's like Breath of Life where it's like, oh, I just use this one ability the whole time, and like that's kind of boring.
Okay.
So yes.
So a lot more parity between the Magicka choices.
Yeah. So stamina is definitely on the roadmap. In the future, I think it'd be nice to have to work a little bit on stamina and a little bit of Magicka at the same time, just so one crowd doesn't feel like, oh, we kind of forgot about them or we're not paying attention to them. Like we definitely are, and yeah, we'll be improving that in the future and giving them some cool buffs.
Okay.
And the other thing is we've made so many changes in this update. How do I say? Like we don't want to put in so many changes that
balance just becomes crazy.
Either it's crazy to balance or it implements, a bunch of bugs or whatever. So we can still do a lot in each of the updates, but not so much that it's too much and then overwhelming for everybody.
Yeah, because you guys are working on itemization, like all the new sets, itemization rewards for the new trial.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of bug fixing constantly and updating abilities. So
the focus
there's a lot going on.
For Thieves Guild, as you're saying, was the classes.
Yep.
And so for Dark Brotherhood, we'll be looking more at the Magicka and stamina.
Yeah, but to be fair though, we are still doing DPS testing and numbers, looking at Magicka versus stamina classes and abilities and playstyles like that, just to make sure, before we get to these updates for stamina, we don't want to be like, oh yeah, all stamina builds are just 5k DPS behind, all the other builds. So we're evaluating that, and if we find any huge disparity, we're going to make some tweaks. If we find out like, oh yeah, you just can't compete at all with this stamina weapon or this stamina weapon.
In addition to like weapon and class abilities, do the things that you're currently thinking of for stamina include the champion system passives?
Yeah. So there's a very specific thing which a lot of people really honed in on the forums, which was a great point, and that's that a lot of the class abilities, which are a stamina morph, they'll do a damage type that isn't really congruent with their champion passives. So the mighty passive gives extra damage to physical, poison, and disease, but there's Dragonite abilities, which they cost stamina, but they deal fire damage. So then people are having to divide their points between the two.
Right.
So we have a really cool idea that we're interested in pursuing, where you would have sort of an extra damage type for the class. So, for example, the Dragonite would be able to do fire damage for his magic abilities, but poison damage for his stamina abilities.
Oh, cool.
So that would also require updating the effects though, because then like instead of just breathing a cone of fire, the stamina morph would then be you get to breathe a cone of poison on everyone,
right.
Which it'll definitely be cool, and then it'll work really well with the mighty. So we got big plans for update 10, and I think people are really gonna like them.
Awesome. It sounds exciting. Okay. So next, I guess one of the other things that we see a lot is people would really love to see weapon ultimates.
Yeah.
Is that something you're
I've heard
considering?
that a couple times.
Yeah, that feeds in really well with the previous thing we're talking about with the champion, right? Where the number of ultimates in the game there are very few that work off physical damage, right? So you have, no or very limited number of options to pick an ultimate that goes with that champion system. So weapon ultimates just make a lot of sense, and then it's, because then all those would just do physical damage if I'm doing, an attack with my two-handed sword or, attack with dual wield or something like that. There's definitely, a ton of work that goes into there because ultimates are like, we put more work into those than anything else because this is what I've been working for, and I want to like really hit the guy hard. Yeah, exactly. Like you're, fighting in combat, working to build this thing up. And then when you finally get there, you want it, to feel good. You want it to, feel like it's impactful in terms of like, the damage and the numbers and just in terms of like general effectiveness and stuff. And then, you got to have like really cool animations and effects on them too. So
please make them look like a kung fu movie.
Yeah. Also, we have Elder Scrolls is we're sort of very realistic, in a lot of the things we do. So we also have to be. Yeah, we gotta like make it look cool, but not like too ridiculous. Like we had actually with the Dragon Knight's Dragon Leap.
Yeah,
ability,
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, it's like, well, how does a guy like jump through the air this far? So the original implementation of the ability, the arc was actually a lot higher. So you could like you were like jumping through the air, and we sort of like toned that down to make it look a little bit more plausible. Like still it's kind of ridiculous to be from a standstill to jump that far, right? But yeah, we try to make things a little bit more grounded.
Dragon power. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, he's a dragon.
So one of the other things that we see commonly asked for on the forums is some sort of change for heavy armor buffs, because a lot of people don't feel like it's quite as good as just using light or medium.
Especially for tanking, yeah.
And if you look at, like, without any passives at all, if you were just asked, would you want to wear light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor? It's like, well, they can have the same enchantments and the same traits on them, so heavy armor just has more armor on it, right? So fundamentally, fundamentally it's better, right? But the key distinction between them is the passives. With light and medium armor, it's like, well, my abilities are cheaper, I get more resource regeneration, and I deal more damage. So those passives are just really good. And the heavy armor passives are definitely useful, but I don't think they quite hit the mark in terms of making me feel really tanky and really hard to kill. So, and that's another one of these things where like, that's a really big fundamental change to the game, and that potentially changes how everyone plays in PvP and in PvE, right? So we want to really take our time with this and get it right and get the balance right on it. So that's something I would expect to see more like update 10. We don't want to like jam it into the PTS without like really going through the paces with something like this.
And when you do get that done, the goal will be to kind of beef up survivability and do you
want to feel like you're wearing heavy armor instead of like, oh yeah, like I can take one more hit, right? Like it needs to feel a little bit,
So at least that's something that it sounds like it's on the roadmap. It's coming not in Thieves Guild, but the next update after that.
Now, when we had talked about this earlier, you had mentioned something about guard.
Oh yeah.
Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we'll do that.
Because it's cool.
We'll do that now. The guard ability, we gave it like a little buff this update, just to sort of make it a little bit more useful. And because we knew more people would be getting the guard and all the AVA abilities, because we reduced the amount of experience required in these skill lines. But we have sort of more grander plans for the guard ability, which is that you'll be able to actually guard one individual ally. So you'll mouse over the person and target to guard them, and that'll sort of connect you and the guarded target with a beam. And then that target, anytime they get hit, part of the damage will be transferred from them to you. So it makes sort of tanks a lot more useful.
Yeah, especially in PvP.
In PvP, where
that's definitely something that's been asked about quite a bit for Cyrodiil specifically.
Yeah, and yeah, we actually like kind of wanted to like push it in, but like it was just not quite ready for update 9. But it'll be really polished and pristine and good to go for update 10. So we're really excited about making the tank playstyle more useful in PvP with that one.
Awesome.
Argonian buffs. So we had some changes in the first round of the PTS update. And I believe we have something else going in for Monday's patch. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I didn't just get confused for a second there at all.
We do.
Yeah, so we've sort of been comparing the Argonian racials as sort of like a 1-to-1 ratio to the other, races of some of the other ones in the passive that they have. So the first thing we did that's already on PTS, right, is increasing the max health bonus from 6% to 9%, which is a little bit closer to the values that other races have with similar types of passives. So the other one that we did a bunch of math on was the potion restore one, where you get the swim speed, which is like, that's like not very excited. So like we didn't even like take that into the calculation, right? Like that's just a bonus you get of like, okay, cool, and I'm Argonian and I'm like good at swimming. And then the potion restore values though, we took sort of some snapshots of a different sort of character and gear setups to look at how much resource restore would you get, if you had this many, resources, what if you had this many resources? And then we looked at that at various different times of, well, if you're activating a potion every 60 seconds, how effective is this going to be for you? If you're activating a potion every 45 seconds, which is, what the cooldown limit is for potions, what's sort of like the max possible benefit you can get for this? And then we sort of compared that to, okay, well, if I'm getting 10% regen just as a flat bonus to this stat, how much am I getting? And the balance numbers we came up with were, if whatever your primary stat was, like either magic or stamina or whatever, if you're taking a potion every 60 seconds, you're basically getting about 10% resource regen increase, in addition to just getting the bonus health and the bonus stamina or whatever if you're magic build.
Right.
And then if you're popping the potion on cooldown every single time it's up, you're getting more than the 10% restore in addition to extra health and extra stamina. So that part of it now, it feels a lot better and a lot more balanced sort of relative to other things. And then another just nice part about this passive in general is that it gives you kind of some utility with it, where you get low health and you're like, oh man, I like really need this health right now, right? Whereas having regen isn't gonna help you if you're taking big chunks of damage. But with this, you can slam the potion and then you can get your life bar sort of pushed up there exactly when you need it. It's also nice because potentially you get into this situation where I'm not quite sure if I need a potion to finish this fight because I don't know quite how long it's going to be. And you're like, well, I'll just take it now because I'm worried I won't have enough. Since they get sort of a big chunk of resources, you can wait till you get to, completely to 0 and then pop it, and then you got, a big extra chunk, so then you can get through the rest of the fight. So it can actually help you use less potions, even though it's giving you a bonus every time you use potions, which is neat.
Okay.
So the old value was 8%, and we increased it to 12%. So we gave it a 50% bump, which is pretty significant. So really interested to see how that goes over and what people think and what they're able to do with the Argonian class.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that the recent, even before the stuff going on Monday, the changes have been really popular combined with the Clever Alchemist item set. There's been a lot of buzz about how awesome that is.
Yeah, that item set, you're like, every 45 seconds I want to be hitting that potion. So that works actually really well with Argonian now to get you more regen than sort of a number of other passives.
Awesome. So before we get to questions, I know there was one last topic, and that is gap closers and
yes.
what we're thinking about those.
Gap closers. So the issue with gap closers on live right now is that someone, if like 2 people are casting a gap closer on you, you kind of like can't move at all because it gives a 500-second immobilize to the person it gets cast on, and they're not allowed to break out of it or counter it in any way because it's sort of more of like a mechanic than something you're able to be countered just to like make sure the charge actually lands because because like we have latency, and it's a PvP game, and it's an MMO, so there's a lot of people on the screen, and people are moving around, and the server has to contact you and like update the monster's position. So the reason we had that in there, is just to make sure when you charge, you'll actually like get where you need to go and hit the guy. But yeah, it feels really bad in PvP when you get sort of like locked in, stun locked or locked in place, and you're like, well, I want to like get out of here, but I can't at all. So the compromise that we have on PTS right now is that you will instead only get snared for 60% instead of 100%.
So you can still move.
Yeah, so you can still move. It lasts a little longer. It lasts 750 milliseconds instead of half a second.
Half a second, you guys, not 500 seconds.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Everyone in chat's like 500 seconds.
Yeah, it used to last half a second.
0.5.
Yeah,
Point
and now
five.
it lasts 3/4 of a second. So that way, if people are constantly casting on you actually be able to get away with that, away
Right.
from them. But you'll also still, if you cast a charge on someone, you'll still be able to get in there and actually hit with the charge attack on them. So that was kind of like a pretty good compromise that we went with.
Yeah, and we'll be looking for the feedback on that.
Yeah,
especially once it
and,
goes live.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we can continue to update because we'd like it to be as non-invasive as possible, but still.
Yeah, nobody likes losing control of their character.
Yeah, but like we still, we don't want charge abilities to feel bad, but we don't want people getting hit with charge abilities to feel bad. So there's definitely like a balance between there that's sort
Right.
of tough to maintain, and you don't want to go too far in one direction or the other one.
Okay.
Everyone's like, but the 8-minute thing, half a second. Not 8 minutes.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. That would be really powerful.
Oh boy,
ability.
that's going to appear on the forums as a truth, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what they said. Well, we might as well jump into the Q&A now.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
A lot of these questions were pulled directly from the forums. We had started a thread earlier this week, kind of just letting you know that Eric would be on the show today, and if you had any
I'm here,
questions.
hey.
So here he is, and now we're going to get into the questions.
We have a lot of them, so we've
do.
got. I'm going to
Yeah.
be reading some of them off of here. It's like 4 pages worth of questions, so there were a lot of really good ones.
Get
and we're going to
comfortable.
answer as many as we can.
Yep.
Yes, get a beverage, get comfy.
Take
Oh,
a drink
hold
of
on.
water,
I was
everyone.
going to say,
You
if
might
that's
as
what we're
well
doing now.
hunker
then-
down.
Okay. Okay, good. We're ready.
Okay. Do you want to start?
Sure. I know chat is like, man, you guys should really focus on toilet questions again this week.
Did we do that? Was that a thing?
We had done that once. No questions
It
about
was
toilets
one
today.
question.
What was
We're never
the-
going to live it down.
What was
Never.
the context?
Oh, it was like, why aren't there toilets?
One of the players
or
wanted to
something?
know why there's no toilets in Tamriel.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Right?
You just gotta
It's not for everybody, I guess.
take care of that somehow, right?
Okay, so in no particular order, I'm going to start these questions. First one being, are there any plans to buff or change the Blood Altar ability from the Undaunted skill line?
Yes, absolutely. So with update 10, not only are we going to be looking at the stamina abilities, but we're also going to go through Werewolf, Vampire, Undaunted, and those skill lines, and sort of make sure that they're all sort of like up to snuff, and that like both the morphs are interesting, and people have some cool choices and decisions and things they can do with those. So Blood Altar's been one that's sort of been at the bottom for a while, and part of the reason for that is we had a prototype version internally where we changed it so that it would just heal everyone in like a big area, and then we're like, we solved it. Blood Altar's good now. We gave it to our internal QA guys, and those jerks, they ran a trial, and everyone slotted this ability, and there were just 12 Blood Altars down, and then there was just like so much healing going out. So I say they're jerks, but like that was exactly what, like that's their job. They did a great job figuring that out, and I'm glad we
So
didn't.
it needs some rebalancing.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't push that live or whatever. But that one definitely needs some more work, and we spent some time on it, but we definitely just need to spend more time on it.
So speaking of Blood Altar, have we ever considered making it something where it could be a feeding source for vampires? Because blood and vampires makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, like that sounds really fun actually, and it kind of reminds me of the Blade movie, where they have these like underground blood banks, and they're just like gobbling up, and I definitely like the thematic and fun part of that, but part of being a vampire is about having to sort of like, find your victims and like, find a safe, or like find the person in the right situation and not just like, oh yeah, I can just, pop this down whenever I want to and drink some blood and then I never, I can just really easily maintain the vampire thing. Like if Blood Altar like had a cost to doing it, so you had to like, go like pay someone underground to like refill your Blood Altar, then I think that would work really well. But sort of like with the way our game is set up right now, I don't think that works great. But I love hearing fun, creative ideas like that, and I'm always open to those.
Cool.
Regarding, were you going to say something?
No. I said I like his answer.
Oh.
Yes, I got a fan. Starts with 1.
Regarding rapid removers.
See?
I did that earlier.
She told me she didn't say that. And
I didn't,
called her
and now
out.
it's in my head. Rapid maneuvers. For God's
Inception.
sake.
I went 4 levels deep to plant that idea in your head.
You probably did. That's all I'm going to be saying forever now. Rapid maneuvers. Since healing is
That's
clearly
an ability in our game.
It is clearly a Templar survivability. This player believes they will undoubtedly heal someone else and then remove their rapids. Are you comfortable with this change affecting a Templar far more than, say, a sorcerer who relies on self-shields instead of healing for survivability?
Yeah, that's a really good, detailed, thought-out question, which is...
It was actually longer, and I kind of cut it off a little bit.
Together.
I did, I smashed it.
Don't worry, I got the point. Yeah, and in general, that sort of goes to our philosophy of not wanting to homogenize the classes. And yeah, like they all play different, and some classes are better in some situations, and some classes are better than others. And sort of with that particular healing ability, that sort of makes the Honor of the Dead morph a little bit better, because that morph only hits one target, right? So you're more likely to just heal yourself with it, especially if you're low health and running away, whereas... with the other morph, it's an AoE and it's going to hit 2 different targets. So if you heal someone else with it, yeah, it's going to take it off. So yeah, like that's a really good point, and yeah, we're definitely okay with it. But yeah, like that's an example of like a really good detail of all these changes that we made that we didn't initially think of every single situation in which every single ability gets cast, and yeah, like that's one of the things we're going to keep monitoring and taking a look at. But yeah, it's a good question.
So with all the crazy damage numbers on PTS and HP pools, health pools remaining the same, people who are relying on heals, namely Templars, will face greater survivability issues than someone relying on shields. Is this also intentional? Do people just need to stack more damage shields?
Yeah. So that's
yeah, no.
That's been definitely a pretty contentious topic in general, and we're definitely not comfortable with the current level of the meta in which people are able to stack multiple shields and then they're stacking all of their points into offensive stats and they're also getting the defensive stats. It's just a little bit too effective. And I keep going back to like the whirlwind change, right, where we like reduced the radius a little bit, but we didn't want to go too far with it. We wanted to make some changes and evaluate how those play out, and then see if we need further changes. Instead of like, oh, this was the primary play style that I did with this class, and now you guys have just completely obliviated it. Now there's no reason for me to play this class anymore, right? So specifically, what we've done with damage shields is in the champion tree we added the shield breaker passive now, where at a full investment you can do 25% more damage to targets with damage shields. And then the second piece of this is that you can now apply secondary effects to targets with damage shields. So if you do Searing Strike with the Dragon Knight, you're going to apply a damage over time effect to the guy with the shield, whereas before you wouldn't. So that's what we have in there right now to deal with that. There's definitely more that we can do and more that we are considering, but we want to sort of see how those changes go. And other possible solutions we have is, make it so that you can just critical strike someone with a damage shield, right? They'll just take a whole bunch more damage. So that's definitely something that's on the table. A really cool thing that we heard on the forums was like, oh yeah, what if you make damage shields like a major buff category? So then you wouldn't be stacking a whole bunch of shields together, right? Like you would just pick one, based on sort of what fit more with your class or what ability. Yeah, so you choose one and you could have that. There's a couple of drawbacks to that particular solution, because some of our damage shields are very specific. Like some just work on magicka, some just work on stamina,
Right.
and some of them like scale based on the amount of health you have. So it's kind of weird if all of those count as like the same thing, even though they have very different functions. So that's something we've sort of been thinking about and navigating. And then another possible solution we've talked about is, what if damage shields are sort of not like, they don't function as much as like an in-combat heal, but their role is you cast them before combat and they help you deal with burst damage. So that solution would be that there's a cast time on the damage shields, so that you want to do it when you're not in combat, so you're not wasting that cast time. And then the actual value of the shield would then be would be higher, because you're not casting it quite as frequently.
Are you thinking with that particular scenario that you couldn't be in combat? Like it would not allow you to use the ability if you were in combat?
Oh yeah, no, good question. That you would still be able to cast it in combat. It wouldn't be like you'd have to spend more time doing it. It would be a little bit more risky, right?
Right.
Even if it had, a 1.5 second cast time, you could still apply the shield when you're in combat, but then you'd be vulnerable to like being interrupted.
Sure. Okay.
Instead of right now, you can just, keep casting it and no one can really stop you very effectively from doing that. And there's sort of a downside with that too, because there's some damage shields which we particularly designed for you to use in combat, like the Templar Sun Shield.
Yeah.
It actually gets bonus power the more people you hit with it. So that's something we have to navigate as well. So we're definitely considering a lot of options, and we have been thinking about this problem a lot. And yeah.
Sounds like it's pretty complex.
Yeah, we got some ideas. we're stewing them. We're trying to figure out what works best for the game, though.
Okay.
The next question we have is from someone who says he's relatively new at playing the game, finds it frustrating that the effectiveness of percent health abilities are significantly reduced in PvP. He says he understands why it was done in conjunction with the champion point system, but are there any plans to rebalance the abilities so they can regain some of the effectiveness under Battle Spirit?
Yeah. So yeah, like the two that come to mind immediately are Dragon's Blood, and then the Templar Sun Shield. Both of those abilities were designed specifically for tanks, right? And the meta right now is very damage focused, right? People are just trying to do as much damage as possible, so they have much fewer points into health. So therefore, this damage shield isn't going to be very good. That scales on your max health if you only have 20,000 health, whereas if you had 60, it would be really good, right? So we're trying to find like a balance point that sort of like works good in PvP and PvE and works with multiple playstyles within both of those as well, because we don't want to get into like the sort of like unkillable tank situation, which we've had before. So yeah, as I mentioned with the guard changes, we're definitely looking at making tanks more effective in PvP. So we'll be evaluating those skills, and as a tank, if I'm playing with those skills, like what do I need to do to make sure this was designed for a tank, so I want to have this ability slotted on my bar. So yeah, up to update 10, we'll definitely take another look at those in conjunction with guard and see how they're performing. But we're okay with not every build wants to slot every ability, right? Like some abilities are better for certain roles, and that's okay with us in general.
Same with the champion passives.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So when and are we getting updated PvP vendor bags?
Aha, the old PvP vendor bags. With those, in general, there's sort of a specific thing we're a little bit worried about, where a lot of people have amassed a huge amount of AP. So if when we come out with the new season, we just we just let them straight up buy gear or buy bags with gear, then they'll be able to buy all the gear immediately. And then they sort of like get an advantage over other players, and then they don't have anything to look forward to for the rest of the season, because they're like, well, I already got all my gear, like why would I need a PvP?
Right. They just get everything all at the beginning.
Yeah. And that's why right now we have stuff appearing in the rewards for the worthy for, okay, you played and you get a bunch of honor, we'll send you one, or you played a ton, you got on the leaderboard, awesome job, here, have an item. A potential solution to this is if we had sort of an AP cap, where you can only hold a certain amount, then you would be able to carry some over, sort of between updates. So, okay, we come out with some new gear, you can buy a bunch of bags and get some of the pieces, but you wouldn't be able to, complete the whole set. So that'd be a solution that we may look at pursuing with that if we wanted to make the bags purchasable. But also that does sort of have some other knock-on effects to gameplay in general too, because then you're like, well, if I can buy a bunch of gear, but I also want to buy repair kits, then I'm kind of like sacrificing buying repair kits and siege stuff that helps my team to instead like be greedy and get a bunch of items. So like there's some sort of considerations we're playing with there too, where we want you to, be participating in the game system and like helping your fellow players and stuff like that.
Did you mention something about an AP cap?
Yes.
Because you got a lot of response from people when you mentioned that.
Good or bad?
They were not positive, I'll say.
I'm not saying that's definitely something we're doing. I'm just saying that's a potential solution to this problem. And like we haven't implemented that. It's not like, we're definitely doing that. It's just like, hey, this is an idea. This is how we could solve it. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
one of
here's
many
your
ideas.
feedback.
Yeah, and of course, if we did an AP cap, right, anyone who's over the cap, we would need, to have some sort of compensation to make sure they didn't just have it all wasted when the cap went in, too, right? So, there's a lot of stuff that would go in with the cap, so...
And if you were at the cap, that would kind of diminish the fun of doing PvP, too.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's a lot that goes in with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Real quick, kind of saw something in passing in chat. A couple of people were like, Update 10, what's that? We sort of use that interchangeably with
the name of the DLC.
The name of the DLC. So the one that's coming up in March is Thieves Guild, and sometimes we'll say Update 9. Update 10 is the one right after that. It'll be Dark Brotherhood. That'll be in Q2 2016. So some of the changes that we're talking about is for Thieves Guild or Update 9. Some, if you hear Update 10, is Dark Brotherhood.
Yeah.
I'll try to say Dark Brotherhood as much as possible.
And
okay.
that's kind of
Just
a carryover from before we had DLCs and named them. We called them all Update 1,
Update whatever,
2, Update 3. So it's kind of an older terminology.
So that's kind of a good segue into this next question. Somebody thinking that more skills need to be looked at and revised than what was just mentioned in the forum post that we had earlier this week. Will these be iterated on in the next incremental, or would they have to wait until Dark Brotherhood? And additionally, 2 questions.
Bonus.
Will the item trade revamp and racial passive revamp come with Dark Brotherhood, since it wasn't something that was listed?
Yeah, gotcha. So I talked a little bit about this in terms of like the stamina changes and stuff like that, right? Where, we just can't do everything we want to do every update. So, we try to just do as much as possible. And we want to think about, in general, like making sure it was kind of even between all the builds, which, we'll definitely do a better job of that going forward. Like every update, we just, we want to make sure we're improving the game, improving the abilities, sort of making sure the game doesn't get stale just by, like really we can change a pretty small number of things and have a pretty dramatic impact. Like another piece of the AoE caps, right, is we added a new item set where when you kill a target, he explodes and does damage to all the nearby enemies, right? So that sort of encourages a kind of interesting playstyle where you're like, maybe I'll actually just try and pick off a couple of individual targets in this group and then have a bunch of explosions to nuke them all down.
Right.
And then you're like, trying to pick your target of like, okay, who's like the weakest guy I can find in this pack, and then just like try to light him up real fast and do a bunch of damage to all the guys. So it is possible for us to, make small changes that have big gameplay impacts, but we want to make sure, we really think everything through and spend a lot of time before we just put in a change. So that's why we try not to do a lot of gameplay stuff with incrementals, because we want to really get the balance down on everything and make sure it's working together and there aren't any bugs with it.
Fixes,
even though there are still some bugs sometimes, right? Like like you should see the number of bugs when we just implement, the first implementation. Like there's sometimes a lot of bugs, but like our QA does a really good job of like finding the vast majority of them before they even hit PTS. Yeah. And this PTS, I think we've done a really good job of. I've had a bunch of people on my team just like combing over the forums and like looking at streams and like getting tons of feedback and like really finding as many bugs and bug reports and then looking into those issues. So I'm pretty happy with how well PTS has been going this update.
So what about the racial passives? What is the timeline for that?
Oh yeah. So racial passives in particular, I don't want to tweak them too much more than just sort of like some numerical increases for things that are sort of underperforming until we get the barbershop feature in.
Okay, yeah, the character customization.
Yeah, because I don't want to have someone who's like, yeah, I made this specific race because it was really good at like Magicka or whatever, and then you change some of the things to be stamina.
And I can't change it.
Right, and like I don't want to just like yank the rug out from under their feet.
Right.
And then they're like, well, now I have to spend like 100 hours to like get all the way back to what my old character was if I want to remake it.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely something on our radar, and we will be updating that when the time comes. And then the item traits, I would say soonish.
Okay.
I don't want to necessarily commit to any particular update, but we do have a design for improvements to item traits that we're all pretty excited about. And the goal with the item traits is to make it so that you don't get something and you're like, oh God, this is useless. I got exploration. I've already explored the whole map, and I would never want this. So yeah, we'll release more details about that in the future, and hopefully try to get some feedback on what our ideas are for that.
Okay.
Right on.
Are there any current plans to change how skills gain bonus power from having more max resources? Currently, if you don't pool all your attribute points into stamina or magicka, for instance, you're generally limiting what your build can do.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is kind of part of what like the shield stacking, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm getting a ton of offense and a ton of defense just by going magicka, or just by going for a ton of magicka, I'm doing more damage with my abilities and I'm healing for more, for example.
Kind of negating the need for resource management.
Yeah, because now I have more resources and I'm doing more damage, right? Like just going for magicka is super good, compared to health in a lot of situations. And people generally try to have like the minimum amount of health possible, right? So yeah, we do agree that's a problem. Fixing this would be a very significant game-wide change of like all the background systems and numbers and stuff like that. So right now we're kind of just more in the prototype phase where, we're going to try some stuff and see how it works and really scrutinize it and see what we think. But yeah, we don't want to like share any details to like get you guys excited about that or 500-second snares or anything like that. But yeah, it's definitely something that
Somebody just came into the show, I'm sure, and was like, what?
Yeah.
why would you
8 minutes snares.
ridiculous.
This is a good question. Will Dragon Knights ever receive a stamina version of either Molten Whip or Flame Lash?
Yeah, this is a question we get asked a ton, right? Because like everyone like loves having stamina abilities and they like having their own unique thing. But sort of part of the problem with this is that it kind of homogenizes all the classes. If like every class has a stamina version of sort of like high damage, spam ability that they, you just cast over and over and over again. And it sort of decreases even the need for like the weapon skill lines. If every Dragon Knight is using, Whip and every Templar is using, the Puncturing Strikes ability, then it's like, why do we even have these other abilities here? So with different classes, we wanted to give them different types of stamina morphs and, some of them different sort of utility and dots and other things like that to make them different and unique and sort of stand out. So in general, I don't think that's something we want to do. Update Dark Brotherhood 10, Dark Brotherhood, is somewhere where we're looking at improving some of the weapon skill line abilities so that maybe you're a little bit more interested in using some of the things they have there and you don't feel like, oh, I really want, to do this very specific type of thing, but I just don't have access to it with the abilities that you guys have provided with the current weapon lines.
Right. Okay. So this is a question about barrier, which I know we talked a tiny bit about earlier. This player would like to know why we decided to make barrier affect only 6 people, and they can understand the change, but they just aren't clear on why it was 6. They go on to say that they feel that 12 would be more reasonable, making it so that if you're in a 24-man group, you only need 2 people to run it instead of 4. By only affecting 6, you have to have that many more people. So are there any thoughts on adjusting this?
Well, specifically, when we were taking a look at barrier, we were comparing it to like the Templar's Rite of Passage ability, and the Nightblade has an AoE ultimate healing ability too. And we wanted it to be comparable of like, you'd look at the 2 abilities and be like, well, maybe I'll use this one or maybe I'll use this one, like they're both good.
And those are also 6.
Yeah, and those are also 6 targets. And yeah, that was just general, all our heals, we wanted to be pretty rigid about the 6 target thing. And we did reduce the cost of barrier to be, closer to those abilities so that, now it's not quite as powerful when I do cast it, but I do have more casts available if I'm, within a prolonged battle. And like the other morph of barrier that gave you some ultimate back for each target, we also increased the value of that. So you weren't hitting as many targets, but you'll get a little bit more restored for each target that.
So maybe instead of having 4 people in a 24 group running barrier, you'd have 2 who are running barrier and 2 who are running one of the other abilities you just mentioned.
Yeah. So trying to get a little bit more diversity in there, so that like, it's not like, you just like have to use barrier and that's the only way you're successful.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be like, that's a pretty big change, right? So yeah, we'll definitely be checking out feedback and stuff for that and seeing what people think.
Okay.
Here's one from chat. Somebody was just asking if you have any intention on bringing back blinding flashes.
Wait, 1 second. I want to make a note about barrier.
Time out.
Designing on the fly, folks.
That's actually, about barrier. That's the thing I just wrote down.
What?
Yeah, people were talking about barrier. If I have a group of 12, right, and I have 2 people casting the barrier, I don't want, it to get distributed onto the same person multiple times.
Right.
So I was just, writing a note there where we'll look into the sorting logic for barrier, and we can make it so that it'll look to see, this target doesn't have barrier, so put one on him, or this, this guy already has one, so let's look for anyone else possible, and then, if there's no one else, then we can put another barrier on him.
Okay.
What was your other question that I was rude about and ignored?
Oh, that's okay. If you have any intention on bringing back blinding flashes.
Yeah, so that was definitely a super powerful ability, which was, there were sort of like multiple reasons we took it out. Also, we don't have really good feedback in our game for when you miss. Like it feels bad because you just like swing your weapon and you're like, well, I didn't hit him, what happened? And you're like, I'm pretty sure I was moused over him, but it didn't hit him. So like, I'm not sure, like, was there lag there? Or was I not targeting him? Like, it's just kind of confusing in a game with the targeting system that we have. And I think specifically what they're looking for is an ability that'll help with tanking as a Templar, right? So that's definitely something we can look into, like, an ability that sort of still gives that type of function, but sort of like works better within the confines of the game that we have.
That makes sense. Okay. So we talked about Templars a bit earlier, and one of the big things that we see them asking about is mobility boosts, specifically for stamina Templars. Is that something that we're looking at?
Yeah, and that sort of goes back to the making every class feel different and feel unique. So yeah, Templars don't have that buff, and it's the major expedition buff, to be clear about that. And yeah, it's an awesome buff. It's really powerful, but that makes the Templar play very differently. I'm more about putting down areas of protection, and I want to stand in these, and this is sort of like my house, and if you come into my house, it's going to be bad for you, instead of, I'm really good at running away or whatever. So it helps distinguish the Templar from the other classes, but we also wanted to slightly sort of lower the disadvantage you get from not having that buff. So what we've done with this update is that Major Expedition, instead of giving you a 40% movement buff, it gives you 30%, and Sprinting now gives you a 40% instead of a 30%. So we sort of just flip-flop them because everyone has the sprint ability. And then it also means that the total maximum speed you can achieve is still the same, right? You can still get the 70% movement speed like before, so you won't be that slower. And then it makes it, there's some things where you can get like reduced sprint cost and stuff like that. So we realize not everyone is going to be pouring tons of points into that, right? But it makes it slightly better to have reduced sprint cost because it's more likely that you're going to want to be sprinting in combat, and it's actually a pretty useful thing to be doing. So that way Templar aren't quite as far down in terms of mobility battle and like how fast someone can catch them, or if they're running away, how far they can get before someone catches them.
Okay.
Next question. We pulled this from the forums, but there's been a lot of people asking in chat also.
Handy.
It must be a really good question.
It is. It's a great one. Could you explain the thought process behind the change to funnel health? This one player said, I'm still at a loss for the nerf since it's a hot and not nearly as good as Breath of Life, yet it was still changed.
Yeah. So I really like how, with this question, he's doing a comparative analysis between two different abilities. That's actually something we do internally. I was just like pounding my microphone. Sorry, there's a little a little hiccup going on there.
Audio
Sounds
guy
still
in the
good?
corner is shaking his
Oh,
head.
He's like,
oh yeah. He's like, what are you doing to me, man? You're killing it. Yeah, so a lot of times we'll compare, abilities to each other to sort of see what their effectiveness is. And when this particular ability, it does the same amount of damage as sort of a nuke ability, like the Flame Lash from the Dragon Knight, or the Destruction Staff as well. They're sort of nuke abilities. Like, it does the exact same damage as those, but then it has the added utility of healing myself and 2 other allies for 25% of the healing done. So I'm getting like a 75% heal, and that heal happens every time I cast the ability, even though it's a heal over time. So I'll get that heal value initially, and then if I don't refresh it or whatever, then these guys are also getting more ticks for that 25%. So we were seeing numbers where like Nightblades were able to top both the damage and healing charts at the same time, which is crazy strong. And then even, internally with, our test groups and even on the live server, we would play with Nightblades. And if you have 2 Nightblades in a group, you basically like don't even need a healer, because there's just so much healing coming from those guys. So then you can run a dungeon group with, 3 DPS and a tank instead. So it was like that particular ability was just way over budget and way too strong. So that's why we nerfed that one.
Okay. We've got a sorcerer question here. Are sorcerer pets not affected by battle spirit in Cyrodiil defensively?
Yes, correct. They are not affected.
Okay.
This wasn't like a design choice. We were like, yeah, like these should be immune to this game-wide mechanic. It was sort of... It's sort of just like it got implemented, and like there's all these different abilities and things we were testing on it, and we're like, yeah, okay, this generally looks good. But yeah, pets, not only do they not get affected by that, but also the champion passives as well. Those don't affect pets. So definitely in the future, we want to take a pass and make sure they're sort of integrated more, tightly with the rest of the game, right? So just, sort of all the systems are sort of working the same way with the pet as they were with the player, just because it's more intuitive, and then you understand, exactly this is working this way in all different situations. It's just like easier to understand, and it makes sense.
Okay.
The next question, I'm actually going to pull it from chat. Somebody asking if there's any plans of adding an execution ability for Dragon Knight.
Oh yeah. This is, I like that there's another stream next to ours, and I was just like.
We have a lot of monitors set up.
Yeah,
and one of them's like 30 seconds behind it.
Yeah.
we
kind of
see
odd.
ourselves everywhere.
I'm like, hey, looking good, other Eric over there in the future that happened to be pointed at me when I just did that.
There it is. It just happened.
Yeah. So Dragon Knight, right? Yeah. We specifically didn't give Dragon Knight an execute, even though we're asked for that constantly, just because we want Dragon Knight to feel different from the other classes, and they're sort of deep, like their DPS is not any worse than the other classes because they don't have an execute, and their damage is more based around applying dots and maintaining those dots to multiple targets, and that's how they do a lot of damage, and that just makes not Nightblades, Dragon Knights, right? Dragon Knights?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it just makes them feel a little bit different than the other classes. And
So
then,
just like you were saying with Templars having not necessarily the same mobility as Nightblades.
yeah, and it's sort of like interesting then when you're fighting a Nightblade. Why do I keep saying Nightblade? That's not.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I said it.
We were talking about Nightblades before, and I just got them. Yeah, so you're fighting a Dragon Knight, and you get like low health, right? You don't have to worry about them being an execute, right? So you can you have a little bit more flexibility there of like, oh, okay, I can wait and then cast this damage shield that gives me a really big bonus because I'm low on health versus, oh, I'm fighting a Nightblade, right? And I know as soon as I get to 25%, he's gonna pop his execute on me and take me down really fast. So it makes the combat more interesting. It makes it more interesting when you're playing other classes, or when you're working with allies. It's like, oh, okay, I can get this guy down to 25%, and then I'm going to go attack someone else, and you can finish him off with executes. So I think it just makes the game more interesting overall.
Okay. This actually got another Dragonite question. Dragonites, not Nightblights. Are molten armaments...
Just to be perfectly clear.
Are molten armaments and igneous weapons supposed to override each other when cast from multiple Dragonites? Seems like kind of a loss for stand builds to constantly have their major brutality buff overridden by major sorcery.
Yeah, totally not intended at all. One of my guys actually just fixed this bug today, so
great.
It won't be in for the next build we have for PTS, but the one after that.
So it'll be fixed by time.
Yeah, it'll be
this
fixed
whole
before it goes
update
to live.
goes
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That was a really good point.
Yay! Bug fixing.
What is the thought process behind the new gear sets which have PvE and PvP specific bonuses? Why are they not viable in both styles of gameplay? And will there be a continuation down this route of dividing the gear between the two types of gameplay?
Yeah, that's a really good question. This is kind of a new thing that we're trying, and it might work or it might not work out, so we're gonna kind of see how it goes,
and see how feedback is.
Yeah, but we interviewed different groups of players. We talked to guilds, PvE and PvP, and something players were requesting a lot with the itemization is they wanted the content that they were doing specifically to provide items that were then making them more powerful in that type of content, so that they'd have like a sense of real progression and mastery of not only am I know these mechanics really well and I can do everything perfectly, but now like I'm doing a whole bunch more damage. So like we can kill the boss really fast, and we know how to like avoid all his attacks, and we know like exactly where you need to run for each part. And then for the PvP side of this, it allows us to create some really cool custom type of bonuses that sort of apply specifically to the metagame and things that are happening right now. So like, yeah, we have that set that lets you do the AoE damage to big groups, which is really good for what's going on right now. And then like we have a set where the longer you're in combat, like the higher the thing builds up. So that sort of helps in sort of these like sort of long stalemate-y type of battles. And that said, we actually just buffed, and that'll be coming in a couple weeks. So it actually stacks up even higher than it does right now. So if you're making a build specifically for like long, drawn-out battles, that'll help you eventually be able to like chop through someone.
And part of this was to address the complaints that we see from some players where, why are you making me PvP for a gear set that I really want for PvE,
Exactly.
and vice versa.
Yeah, so now you can play the type of content you want and get stuff that's good for that type of content. And I know this sort of thing has been tried before in other games, and then it hasn't always been successful. One unique cool thing that we do have in our game, though, is a very robust and powerful crafting system.
Yeah.
So you can always craft gear that will give you bonuses that will, it's sort of like the go-between guy where it's like these bonuses are sort of more generically useful and they'll help both in PvE and PvP. So there's a lot of flexibility with that system, and it lets us do some cool things. We're kind of experimenting with it. So far we've gotten a lot of good feedback on the sets, but yeah, definitely we'll be monitoring this very closely on live and seeing what people think and if they like the sets or not.
Okay.
Cool. There was a few questions about toppling charge. We had in the patch notes for 2.3.0.
0.7,
Pretty
8,
sure
9, 6.
that there were some fixes going in for toppling charge, but it didn't actually fix the entire ability. Just calling out that we are aware that there is, it's not completely fixed. Some of the things we put in made it better, but we know it's not completely there yet. So I don't know when it will be fully fixed. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, so I can provide a few more specific details on
Please
that.
do. I'm kind of just going on what I know.
Yeah, so I guess our patch note wasn't really specific enough, and I think we'll have that updated for when it goes live.
Yes.
But the issue with it we fixed was it was very unresponsive when you would weapon swap. So if you would charge and then press weapon swap, it would just like ignore your input and be like, no, you didn't weapon swap at all. You can't weapon swap. And it would take like a really long time before you would like be pressing weapon swap. You're like, come on, like get in there and do it. So now it's a lot more responsive, and you can weapon swap a lot faster after you charge. So it's the ability is a lot more useful now if you like have it on an alternate bar and you want to like swap and charge and then weapon swap. Like that definitely works a lot better now. There are still some issues, and part of them are like kind of weird feedbacky things. Like if you're on like a cliff, right, and or even like steep terrain, and there's a guy underneath you, and it can't like draw a path to it.
Yeah.
Then it won't let you. It's like, all right, you can't charge to this guy, right? But we don't inform the users very well of that. So you actually like start casting the ability, and you kind of like fidget forward a little bit, and you see like the charge effects as well, like some graphical stuff of like you kind of pulling out the spear, and then you stop. So you like keep pressing it, and you like kind of keep jittering.
It's like a really awkward dance.
Yeah.
Is that how you dance?
This is why I don't dance.
Yeah, so...
And it sounds like it's something pretty complicated to fix, too.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on there. So that's a part of it we want to fix. And then also there's times where like the server starts lagging and it can't draw the path data for like any charge abilities, and then like none of them charge you at all. So yeah, there's definitely some more complicated, deep-seated issues that, and we do actually have some bugs in on this, and yeah, like we do have them assigned to programmers, but yeah, they're pretty complicated in terms of the fixes. So we'd like to get them in. We know that it's been annoying for a long time, and yeah, we're doing a lot of things, and we're trying to get them all fixed as fast as possible. But
Okay. So this is about VR14 loot sets. So why do I receive VR14 loot and sets from VR16 bosses when running VR16 dungeons?
Yep. That's a good question, and that was part of just the way we had itemization set up, particularly at the beginning of when we came out with the V16 stuff, where we didn't want people who were like doing really easy content to get the very best gear in the game. However, now it's sort of like, well, VR16 stuff has been out for a while, and it's like not that special or unique. So like, why can't I just get? Why can't I? Why isn't it more readily available? And like, it's kind of confusing because like, generally the monster level lets you know what level of gear you're gonna
what
get.
I would expect. Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something we're looking at improving in the future and making things more available. But when we have like really elite tiers of gear, right? Like if we were to come out with a higher tier of gear, we wouldn't want you to just be able to run any dungeon and be able to pick it up. So that's sort of the thought process there, and I think we can definitely refine and improve on it as well.
Okay.
So we have maybe like 5 more questions to go. Why do quests throughout the game give rewards that maybe you sometimes just don't want, with the possible exclusion of jewelry, he says. So
Everybody
likes
loves jewelry.
but
Yeah, that's a good example of how the team has gotten a lot more proficient. I think
Kind of evolved.
Yeah, of like, we're a lot better now at making cool items than when we first made the game, right? Like, the monster masks are super cool. We got these really cool AVA sets coming out that let you do some interesting things. Like, you can, like before, it was like, oh, we'll just put some stats on it and then people will like it, right? And then we're like, what if we make it drop meteors? And people are like, yeah, do more of that. So we actually have a design that I'm really excited about, where we would be giving out a lot more item sets to people doing quests at lower levels, and it's definitely a pretty big task to go through and retrofit like every single quest through the beginning of the game. And you'll notice with Thieves Guild now, while you're doing these quests, every quest you're gonna get a set piece. And that model seems like it feels really good. You're like, yeah, I really feel like I was rewarded for having this experience. And then, I can like look at this piece of gear, which is actually good and does something interesting. And it like, kind of like I remember the content and the story there. So it's definitely a good model, and I really like it. And yeah, we'd like to do more going forward in the future.
Awesome. So for PvP, obviously, lag is still a concern. It's something we're constantly working on. Did you and your team make any changes to skills to help address PvP lag concerns? And if so, which skills?
Yeah. we've been going through quite a number of different things and improving things, and we sort of like look at the metrics and sort of like identify bottlenecks of like, oh, okay, the system is slowing down a lot in this particular way, and then we're able to make an improvement and sort of open up that bottleneck, and then rerun the numbers and see, okay, now what's the next bottleneck? What's the next thing that's slowing down the server? Like, is it, the physics server, or is it like combat handler, or is it, like message requests and stuff like that? So there's a lot of things that go into it, right?
And you work with our engineering team on this?
Yeah. I've been having a whole bunch of meetings with them and talking about solutions and helping them identify, the types of abilities in the game that could be a problem, and then having them look at those and talk about solutions. And sometimes we end up modifying abilities as well to make them a little bit more efficient. Like, there were some sets that we had that were like aura-based sets, right? Where they're like pulsing out something on your allies like over and over and over again. And we changed those to be group only instead of affecting everyone. So that made it a lot more efficient to do that. So some of the other things we've done is that abilities that check how many pieces of armor that you're wearing are now more efficient. So they're not having to do a whole bunch of extra calculations with that. We scrubbed through basically every ability on your character that was providing a whole bunch of different buffs and consolidated that so it wouldn't cast quite as many different effects and things on your character. There were a bunch of champion abilities that adjusted the cost of abilities based on certain conditions. So those are a lot more efficient. We modified the individual abilities to like build that cost check into them instead of having a separate thing that was modifying it. And additional, like we made it so that some of the cost things, they were checking every single part of an ability. So even though the ability just does damage, or it would do, like an ability does damage and it does a snare and it does some other pieces, like it was trying to modify the cost of every single link in the widget chain, and now it just looks at the very first one. So that was another nice efficiency gain.
Okay.
So we made a bunch of changes, but obviously lag's not fixed, so we're not done, right? We're still looking and we're still adjusting things. So next up we have looking at the item traits and the way those are doing calculations. We have some sorting requirements for when you cast abilities and they're hitting multiple targets, and then also some potential line of sight optimizations.
Okay.
This question should be pretty easy to answer. When are you planning to address the disparity in power and utility between dual wield and two-hand weapons?
Good question. Update 10.
Which is Dark Brotherhood.
Dang it!
Dark Brotherhood.
Oh man, I only had one thing to say, and I slightly,
It's okay.
did a great job.
All right, so this is our second to the last question, yeah? Or do we have any more from chat we want to go over?
Can ask this one and we'll see.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
So when are you going to implement some more desirable stamina-based item sets, especially crafted?
Yeah. Yep. No, that's totally a good question.
Just yes.
And we actually got some feedback on some of the item sets that are in there right now. Where there's an item set where you roll dodge and it leaves behind a glowing rune that kind of like looks thematically appropriate to the Thieves Guild. But it was doing magic damage, and someone on the forums was like, well, it's like kind of green, so why don't you make it like poison damage? And then it works really good for the new mighty passive, right? That's doing poison damage and physical and disease. And we're like, no, that's a good point. So we just did that. And then there's a couple, like we were talking about with crafting in general, right, where those are a little bit more generic. And like with Clever Alchemist, for example, we specifically built that so that it would be good with magicka and stamina, because the bonuses are max health, and then weapon damage and spell damage.
So more universally.
Yeah, of just like, oh yeah, this said, like anyone, and like that makes sense with crafting, right? Because you can craft anything in light, medium, or heavy. So that's definitely something we want to do more of with crafting. But in general, going forward, we definitely want to make good sets that work for stamina and good sets that work for magicka.
Okay.
One thing I keep seeing in chat, everyone's kind of asking about barbershop type stuff. That's something that Matt Fire had talked about in his Year Ahead article earlier this year. That is something that we're working on, and it'll be coming later this year.
Yep. So after Q2, after Dark Brotherhood.
Yeah, and artists have like cool hairstyles and stuff, so I'm definitely gonna go in there and get some clips.
Yeah. Mohawks.
Yeah.
Gonna match your hair to it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I can build this.
That sounds like a promise.
This exact hairstyle, right?
Nice. All right. Last question, just to kind of wrap up. We had mentioned in our forum post that we watch streams and we kind of get feedback from all over the place. But one of the places is from live streams. If you're watching them, we do.
Especially during PTS.
Yes. What exactly are you watching for?
Okay. Well, first I wanted to talk about a little bit about just like feedback in general, right, in the different sources. So
Go ahead.
yeah, we have forum feedback, right? We have player streams. We have ability usage metrics of like, you know, how many percentage of people have this ability slotted versus this ability slotted. And then we have internal testing and feedback from
And Reddit too, right?
from those guys. Yep. Yeah, that goes along with forums. Yeah, there's we don't just look at our forums, you know, exclusively. Yeah, there's other sources too. But yeah, in general, we're trying to build a game that is fun for a large group of people, right? Like, we want hardcore people, you know, who are really good and, you know, are grinding all the time, and we want it to be fun for casual people who, you know, they have other things that they're doing with their lives, and, you know, they only want to log in for an hour or two every week. So we definitely, you know, need to keep that in mind when we're getting all these different feedback sources. And no individual feedback that we get, we're like, well, like we have to change this ability immediately, right? Like we take that information in and we use that as sort of a guide to let us know what areas of the game do we need to like really drill down in this specific area and look at this piece of the game and see how it's affected by other pieces of the game. So,
and it really helps when we see kind of similar feedback in every source that we're looking in, and then it correlates with the back-end data that we're looking at too.
Yeah. So if we're like, oh yeah, we know, like a lot of people are saying like, oh, this ability, you know, is not good enough, and then we look at, you know, the numbers behind the data, and we're like, oh yeah, this ability is doing like 100% damage, whereas the other abilities are doing like 200%, right? And be like, oh yeah, that one definitely needs to be updated. So we don't just sort of like, you know, hear the feedback and then immediately do it, right? Like that informs our decision-making process, and then, you know, like we'll be like, okay, here are the bullet points of like people are talking a lot about this, so let's have a design discussion about all these different things and how they interact with the other systems in the game. And then this guy's talking about watching streams specifically. So just to sort of address that, like we listen to what the streamers are saying. We look at like the abilities that they have slotted on their bar. We look at, you know, how they're activating the abilities. We look at, you know, like how they're moving in a fight, and, you know, if they're sort of doing the mechanics correctly or incorrectly, and like, you know, is that okay? I was like, yeah, he didn't do the mechanics the way we expected him to do it, but he did something else that was kind of clever too. And be like, yeah, no, that was like really smart. Like they should totally be able to, you know, do that if they figure it out. And yeah, there's just like a lot of pieces in general to our game, right? Because there's also, well, what item sets there are they using? What types of content are they playing? And also, I think an important part is like, are they having fun playing the game? And, you know, if not, what are the things that are preventing them from having fun? And I know I was talking to Rich a little bit about this, and he is crazy. Like he loves streams. Like he told me he
lurks a lot.
Yeah, he says he's got like 30 streams that he has like all favorited or whatever. And he's like, yeah, every day I get home from work and I go and like check out a whole bunch of them, and, you know, like I'll hang out and see what people are doing. So
because being able to
yeah, he's doing it right now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, being able to watch people play live or even via video is really, really telling.
Yeah, because like a lot of times people do things that we don't expect. And you know, I was alluding to before, sometimes it's like, yeah, we really want people to have to, you know, stand in this part of the mechanic, right? So, okay, maybe we need to change up the positioning of the boss or how much damage this thing is doing, but other times they do really clever stuff when we're like, yeah, man, like, good job, that was awesome. Like, you had a lot of fun doing that, and, you know, you were able to beat it, so, like, yeah, that's cool.
Awesome. Any more questions?
I think that does it.
Okay.
That is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
we addressed a lot today. And we
spent a lot of time, going over the forums to make sure we had as many major issues as possible.
Yeah, and there's been a few questions in here from things that we addressed earlier, so you can always kind of watch the recorded version. That usually goes up shortly after we're done.
And we could also get these questions translated and get them posted to the forums next week. All these questions.
Well, sounds like you just volunteered to do that.
Oh, man.
I'll learn French and German real quick.
So for now, we will say farewell to Eric Wrobel.
Well, thank you and have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, it had been a really long time, and I was really glad to be on the show and sit with you wonderful people and just talk about my favorite thing, which is gameplay and Elder Scrolls Online.
Right on. Well, thanks again.
Yes, thank you.
And we are going to switch over and do a little giveaway for everybody. Let's see. So before we started, we had a bunch of people in chat that arrived a little early, and we hadn't decided what we were going to give away yet. So we let them decide. And they decided that we were going to give away crowns.
Yep.
So I don't know what the keyword is.
How about crowns? Simple, right?
I don't know. I don't think Kai's even ready yet. Nobody type anything in yet. We're not ready.
Wait.
I will say, saw a couple people kind of asking about cross-alliance play for trials. That's something that we're looking at doing. Are you ready, Kai? I can't read that.
Yes.
The text is like this big.
Crowns?
Yes.
Okay, crowns is the keyword, so start now. Or start a couple seconds ago. Cross-alliance play for trials. That is something that we are planning on doing.
In fact, we're actually testing it now.
We are testing it internally, so not necessarily something that's coming in Thieves Guild with all the grouping tool updates, but something that we're actively working on and will be coming in at some point.
And one of the engineers actually stopped me today, his name's Ryan, in the kitchen and said, I really want the players to know that veteran ranks are really, for real, going away. We actually have them in the code now. Well, the removal of them. So take that for what you will. It's happening. Yep.
It is happening soon. All right. So, oh my, the winner
Kai is
of
trolling us on our big.
Not even going to say what he just wrote on the screen, but we will say the winner is Totsford.
Totsford.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Congrats, Totsford, not Tater Totsford.
Kai will be in touch with you on Twitch chat. Just let him know your platform preference if you play on PC or Xbox or PS4.
And we have to ask, what are you going to buy with your crowns now that you've won? We have
Go
to
ahead.
know.
Go ahead. We'll wait. Just kidding. All right. So coming up next, we are going to say hello to Brad Derrick, our audio lead.
All right, Brad, welcome. Thank you for joining us all the way down from the hall.
Yeah, I made the whole long trip all by myself.
So you are our audio lead, and we understand you've been working on some new music for Thieves Guild.
Right. So starting back with Imperial City was the first DLC that we added extra music for since the vanilla launch of the game. Had some time to add some new music to that. And that was only about maybe 10 or 15 minutes of new music. And then with Orsinium, I managed to get in maybe 40, 50 minutes of new music, and that was pretty well received. And so this time, I think we'll get about an hour of new music in the Thieves Guild. Yeah,
kind of increasing the bar each time.
Yeah, I'm setting a dangerous precedent that I'm going to have to keep up with. So yeah, we should have about an hour of all new music.
That's great.
Everyone in chat thinks you're awesome, by the way.
Well, I think everyone in chat, except that guy. Yeah, everybody's awesome.
So in general, what's the process like to create a new piece of music? I'm sure it's really easy.
Yeah, anybody can do it. Well, so for Thieves Guild in particular, well, with any zone, so you look at what the content's going to be like. I talk with content leads and content teams, and my audio guys come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm working on this, I'm working on that, and I start to form a picture of the story and the zone, and then actually jumping into the zone, playing some of the content,
Kinda
wandering
get
around.
inspired.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff is pretty obvious, right? If you jump into a snowy zone or a desert zone or a jungle zone, I mean, there's certain potentially cliched things that leap to mind, like it's got to sound like this or shouldn't sound like that. Some things definitely suggest themselves. So that's a starting
zone
point.
like Hughes Bane, which Anna said was inspired by Australia, where everything wants to kill you. What do you get from that?
Lots of didgeridoo and so that was, we've already got sort of so the Elder Scrolls Online music style book is pretty well defined at this point. And we've already had sort of arid looking zones in the past. So that was a starting point, but I wanted to not make the stuff just sound like all the other arid zones that we've already been in before. So I introduced a bunch of new instruments that we haven't used at all in the score yet. Most notably bowed guitar, which is kind of, well, it's really interesting sounding. Lots of cool stuff can come out of that thing. You can abuse. I've been abusing the hell out of Matt Fiver's guitar for the better part of 3 months.
Nice.
Sorry, boss.
Yeah, he has that in his office, doesn't he?
No, he doesn't. It's
Not
at my
anymore?
house. Nope.
It's
Oh.
It's at my house
So you
with
had a jam
bow
session
jammed through the top.
with
And
Matt Fire at his house.
no, it's at my house. I took his
okay.
guitar. He can't have it back. And let's see what else. Bow guitar, more ethnic percussion, pitched chromatic percussion, things like that. Just little changes, stuff that we've never used in the music before to give it the right kind of feel and a new kind of flavor for these particular worlds.
Awesome.
Nice.
So, can you tell us, I know the audio team is a really fun, crazy bunch, so can you tell us any fun, interesting stories from the audio department in relation to creating
I can
Thieves Guild?
Please tell
Any
us.
Thieves Guild music fun stories?
Just about Thieves Guild music. Okay, I was going to tell the time.
We'll narrow it down a little bit. We know
Matt
there's a
threw
ton
me
of
through the
stories.
screening room wall, and does that count? Let's see. Well, actually, it's not that funny, but we have a piece that we're going to play here in a minute that didn't even exist 36 hours ago. But I was
Wow.
messing around with Matt's guitar, like I said, and I wanted to show the guys kind of what I was up to. So I took this big old beautiful acoustic guitar and grabbed a bow and just knocked out the main theme from Elder Scrolls, just that melody that everybody knows. And I was like, hey, check it out. This is kind of what this thing sounds like, and this is the way a lot of the Thieves Guild music is going to end up sounding, is this kind of timbre. But it was just a throwaway thing. It was a goof. And I sent it out to my guys, and they're like, that's pretty cool. And they showed it to some of the content guys for Thieves Guild, and they were like, dude. And so I was like, all right, fine. We'll keep it.
That's how
We'll use it.
conversations go.
Dude.
What's up? So I decided to keep it, and yeah, I mean, as of yesterday morning, it didn't even exist. And then you were like, hey, let's play something on the show. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll turn this into an actual piece of music and finish it. And I don't know if this is the right time or not, but the one that we're going to hear that's what it is. It's just me screwing around playing the Elder Scrolls theme. They said that's cool, so then I put a little bit of orchestral whatnot to support it.
And this will be in Thieves Guild.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a listen. All right, that was a great piece of music.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I spent all day on it.
It's amazing how you can create when you just
I told you, anybody can
get
do
inspired and just, yeah. Is that the noise you have to make though while you're doing it?
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
like
that
the
face.
audio department's noise.
Yes, it is. That's their token call.
So we mentioned earlier in the show. Did we mention earlier in the show about the soundtrack? We did, right?
Yeah, we did.
That happened. So that. I'm sorry.
It was
long
like
ago.
8 Eric Wrobel hours ago.
Yeah,
Nice.
so there's a new soundtrack, and we already have one up on iTunes, but there's a new one that is going to be up. It could be up now, honestly. It's going to be up any day now.
Any day now.
And it includes...
A whole bunch of stuff.
From Orsinium, right?
Yeah, and Imperial City, and a lot of like, call them B-sides or something, things that were never on the original soundtrack.
Oh, cool.
There's some stuff that's been in-game since day one, but wasn't on the soundtrack. Everything from Imperial City, everything from Orsinium. It got to the point where I had an hour or an hour and a half of music lying around. And, you know, from time to time, people on the forums would be like, hey, how can, I'm tired of ripping this out of the client. How can I actually get the music?
Nobody ever does that.
No, that never has happened. I've never done it. So, yeah, I talked to some people here, and they're like, yeah, that's a fine idea. It's easy enough these days to release an album since we don't have to go press CDs or anything. So I think they're just finalizing, artwork and credits and iTunes details. And, yeah, I was told it might even be out today, but don't bet on that. It might be just out pretty soon.
Yep.
And yeah, it's got, like I said, it's got some oldies, it's got some new stuff. And again, with the setting the precedent of doing new music for the DLCs, there's not enough music per DLC, I don't think, to warrant a release, but like every couple. So there'll be another one, theoretically, after Dark Brotherhood,
Later
which
on
will
this year.
have Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood music, another couple hours of stuff.
Cool.
We had one question come from chat. Well, that was, for audio. Would you be planning on adding more songs for bards in taverns?
Yeah, I would like to do that. Everybody's heard the other ones quite enough, thank you. And we've been asked that all the time. When are we going to get some new ones? It comes down to scheduling, and I think the answer is the next DLC that doesn't have a big zone that requires me to go write an hour's worth of music. I will have time then to sit down and work on that because I won't have to go and do a bunch of new orchestral stuff or whatever. So that'll be the time that I would like to try to do that is, knock out another 10 or 12 of those songs. It'd be great if we could get Maluka involved again. I don't know, she's a busy lady these days.
Yeah.
But even if we can't, we can still, write more songs and get everybody who sang them besides Maluka to come back and sing them again. So yeah, I'd love to do it. So I guess that'd be maybe the one after Dark Brotherhood would be the.
So sometime second half of this year, possibly. Okay.
What about more boss battle themes or music? Is that something on the table?
Do they
That's
want
on
more,
the table
metal
every
guitars?
single DLC, and every single DLC I run out of time. I really want to do it. I want to do more of that stuff. I want to make it better. We've spent a lot of time working on the system, the way the music is put together on the fly, and the way it sort of shifts gears and goes up and down in intensity as different level difficulty mobs enter the fight, or more people enter the fight, or your health deteriorates. There's all this stuff that goes on under the hood. There's just not a whole lot of musical stuff to respond to it yet. So if you pay a lot of attention, if you get in and out of boss fights, you might notice as a piece of music changes gear effectively going up and down in intensity. But yeah, I definitely want to take advantage of that, get some set aside, and again, another DLC where I'm like, okay, it's boss fight DLC. I'm not going to write 40 minutes of pretty stuff. I'm going to focus on the other. I really want to do that.
Just out of curiosity, favorite tattoo or good tattoo story?
Oh boy, favorite.
From one we can see.
Yeah, so
Oh no.
so Mike
Show's
May,
over.
has Mike May been on the show?
I don't know if he has, but
he has a long time
has he?
ago.
He is
So
one of our
concept
amazing
artist
artists.
extraordinaire. I don't know if you can
I
see
haven't
that at
seen
all.
that one. That is
So this is a Mike May original right here.
Wow.
He did. Yeah, he did this.
Oh, it's happening.
Extreme zoom.
Extreme close up. Whoa.
Wait a minute. Oh God, there she is.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't
he
either.
did
That's
that.
really cool.
And the idea was that she's this is corny, right? It's like a muse. It's music. It's the beauty of music that emerges from the grid of technology.
Wow.
Wow.
You can start laughing at me anytime you want. But
That's cool.
that's the idea. So that's Medusa.
Oh, she's awesome.
Medusa's awesome.
She has
9 hours.
She has a very
session.
1920s
Yeah.
kind of movie siren look.
So I-
Didn't you go across the country to get that
I get
one
them all
done?
in Los Angeles, yeah. Every time I go do a VO session, that's my excuse to go blow a bunch of money on deforming myself. Yeah, this was 9 hours, and I slept through the first 2, and by the last 2, I was screaming and begging for them to stop. That's the worst thing ever. And then lastly is Mr. Ball, Mr. Molog. I don't know if you got that one.
That is nice.
Yeah. So I had to get something to commemorate the game. So, anyway,
It's a good choice.
Well, I think that's also a good place to wrap up for today.
Yep. So
Why not,
thanks for
right?
joining us. Can't wait
Sure.
to hear all the music that's coming in the future DLCs. Looking forward to it. And Thieves Guild, of course.
Yep.
yep. Now I gotta go finish it.
Well, get out of here and finish.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
Brad.
Yep,
Sure.
thank you. So that wraps up our show for today. It was a long one. We hope that we were able to address some of your questions and concerns regarding the Thieves Guild ability and combat and champion system changes. We'll post the questions probably sometime next week when we have a time to get them translated. Thanks again for joining us. And
We will be back.
yep,
As
I hope
always.
you have a good weekend. Don't
in 2
forget about
weeks.
the Hearts Day event on PTS on Tuesday. We'll be posting details about it after the show.
Yep. And again, we will be back Friday, February 26th at 4 p.m., our usual time. We will be having a PTS maintenance on Monday to
Yep.
push out the latest version of the PTS patch. So be on the lookout for patch notes and nice conversation
Yep.
from there.
Have a good weekend, and we'll see you in Tamriel.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.